This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin Hoffman.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. Today is Monday, February the 27th, 2023. February has almost clicked away from us here this year. Coming up in today's show, we'll take a look at that ag weather outlook. I talk with Brody Stapel of Edge Dairy, talking about conservation practices and also some of the trends they're seeing in the dairy industry. But first, let's run down those markets. It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. Well, we're at the end of another trading day, and we're turning to Robin Schmhal of agmarket.net. Robin, beginning of the week, almost the end of the month, first notice day on the March grain contracts. I mean, what did we see coming out of that grain trade today?
Well, mainly with the grain trade, the markets were mostly on the defensive today. The corn, soybeans, wheat. Soybean meal was the only one that really showed some strength and consistent strength, but the others were on a defensive. Yeah, we are into the first notice day. There's a little bit of concern there that we might see some higher or heavier deliveries, so there was some selling going on. Now, we didn't see any overnight cash business or export business, but we did see the export inspections. And they weren't anything to really write home about except for wheat. Wheat was at 21.7 million bushels. That was up of 8 million bushels from last week. But that really didn't help the market any, because wheat is dealing with the lower Russian wheat prices hitting the export market. We had a higher dollar last week that's carrying over to this week. Corn inspections were 22.5 million bushels, down 2 million from last week. And beans really took a hit, 25.4 million bushels in export inspections. That was down 32.8 million bushels from the previous week. So that was not a very good situation. Didn't put a huge amount of pressure on beans, but it did keep it on the defensive. Like I said earlier, the corn, soybeans, and the wheat were on the defensive. Now, Brazilian harvest of soybeans is 38.3% complete. That's near the 5-year average. So even though there was some concern about some lateness early of harvest, really it all kind of pans out. It's behind last year, but close to the 5-year average. Now, the Argentina soybean crop could be as low as 30 million metric ton, some are predicting, versus USDA's 40 million metric ton. But now the anticipation is that's going to be largely offset by the huge Brazilian crop that's coming on board. So we keep hearing the broken record of the dryness in Argentina, and the outlook for dryness and whatever. And I think the market's kind of taken that in stride already, looking at the balance between the two and basically saying it may not be much of an issue, as well as a lot of Argentina, the farmers are holding on to a lot of soybeans, so their bins are full unless they reduce some of the taxes on export. We may not see a real impact off of the lower crop until we get into potentially next year.
Now, looking at livestock side of things, we know the cattle on feed report came out right after the close last Friday. Was it what the market expected? Had it already kind of priced it in, or were there some surprises in there that weren't anticipated?
Well, I think the cattle on feed report is notorious for buy the rumor, sell the fact to some extent. They had a lot of it factored in. I mean, we had higher cash factored in, which we saw last week. We saw some northern dressed cattle were traded $3 to $5 higher. Southern cattle $2 to $2.50 higher. Now, there was very light trade last week, so we might have to see packers be a little more aggressive this week, maybe. And I say that maybe. It just depends on how we start going through the week here and what our overall demand is. But they had a lot of it factored in. It seemed like, as they usually do. So we saw a little bit of higher opening, but then for a while today, we were seeing times in a negative territory, positive territory. We ended the day slightly negative on the live cattle side of the equation. Cattle on feed, the actual came at 96%. As of February 1st, the estimate was 96.3%. Placements were at 96% as well, with the estimate at 97.1%. So those were bullish. And marketings came in at 104%, right in line with the expectations. So it was a bullish report. But again, like you said, it was factored in already. And kind of a buy the rumor, sell the fact now. Sometimes the next day or two later, it starts to trade more of that. And we'd anticipate we're going to see some earlier cash trade this week, because the trade was so late last week and so light that there might be stepping up to the plate a little bit earlier this week. Now, box beef at noon was mixed. Choice was down 32 cents. Select was up $1.97. Now, the choice price is above a year ago and the 3-year average. So we did make a dip early in the year, and now we've been coming back on as far as box beef is concerned. So that's positive as far as the demand is concerned. On the hog side, we had a good week last week overall with strong exports. Exports were 16% higher than the previous week. We had positive cash. Cutouts were a little bit choppy. Now, morning cutouts today were up $4.29. So, but that always has a tendency to fade into the close of the day. So we're hoping that we could see some positive there. It's not being reflected in the futures because futures struggled all day. We see some triple-digit losses by the end of the day. Cash was up 2 cents at the midday report, but we're anticipating it being higher today because last week we did see about 3 of the days out of the 4 that were higher cash, which was kind of unusual. We're looking at somewhat of the same this week. Packers seem to be stepping up a little bit more, likely because of maybe some more export demand, maybe some more internal demand. But the futures are struggling technically. It needs to have something underneath in order to provide some support and to be able to trigger traders to look at a long-term buying to turn that trend higher.
All right. Well, Robin, when we're looking at all the stuff that you've had to talk to us about today, I mean, if folks want to look at some of their marketing plans, how do they get in touch with agmarket.net?
Yeah, they can call me directly at 877-256-3253. They can go to agmarket.net. The phone number's on the home page there. They can pick up the phone and somebody will be glad to talk with them.
All right, Robin, we thank you so much for the insight. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right, thank you. Always great to be on with you.
And that again was Robin Schmhal of agmarket.net. Let's go ahead and take a look at the closing numbers. That's coming to us courtesy of the folks at Bar Chart. May corn is down 5 3/4 at 643.5. December new crop down 1/4 at 576 even. May beans down 6 1/2 at 1512 3/4. November new crop down 2 at 1372 even. Soy meal was up $1.80 at 481.80. Soy oil was down 88 cents at 60.34. Chicago wheat for May down 11 3/4 at 710 even. Minneapolis wheat down 14 at 868.5. Kansas wheat down 18 1/4 at 817 even. May oats down 2 at 343.5. April live cattle down 40 cents at 164.97. March feeders up a dime at 189.17. April lean hogs $1.30 lower at 84.72. Pork cutouts down 55 cents at 92.27. Class 3 milk for February a penny lower at 17.85. And that's been our ag market recap. We're going to take a short break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. When we come back, I talk with Brody Stapel of Edge Dairy. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to AMPM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. Well, the dairy industry is just like every other ag entity that we find in the agriculture industry, and that's because of the fact that they benefit from legislation, from trends in trade, and so much more. we don't get a chance to talk about dairy as much as we do corn, soybeans, hogs, and cattle. So what does it mean for the dairy industry, the way things are shaping up right now? We talked to Brody Stapel of Edge Dairy, and here's what he had to say. Right now, we're with Brody Stapel with Edge Dairy. You're the president, I understand. So tell us a little bit about Edge Dairy for those who maybe aren't familiar with it.
So Edge Dairy is based out of Green Bay, Wisconsin. We've got members throughout the entire Midwest. We're a verification co-op based, like I said, in Green Bay, but we're growing, kind of the new kids on the block, but we are up to the third largest dairy co-op in the country now.
All right, so talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges we're facing in the dairy industry. I mean, it seems like every time the dairy industry seems to overcome one, another two show up. I mean, obviously, talk about, obviously let's go with climate first, a little bit about some of the partnerships you have. How are you helping bring that forward and helping those producers be more responsible?
Yeah, so as you may have heard, Edge was selected for one of the Climate Smart grants through USDA, and so we're working through that process right now to secure that funding. But really, we're pretty excited to continue to get more involved at a farm level with a lot of these watershed groups that are out there. We're involved in several throughout Wisconsin right now, but we're looking to expand that throughout the Midwest. But really, there's a couple different avenues that we're looking at, but a lot of it is farmers like to kind of stay on the farm and mind their own business, but they do a lot of really good, creative, innovative practices. And we're trying to take that data and show people what we're doing is working, the science that's working on our farms, and getting it to the desk of a policymaker as well as in front of the consumer. So we're hoping that we can continue to collect that data and show the science that's working through staff, but also the other side of it is getting farmers that are not doing any of these practices involved and getting them to come to the table and at least be willing to try some of these things that we know are working on other farmers.
We'll start with that aspect of it. I mean, you have farmers that aren't doing it. Maybe it's because of cost, maybe it's because they're not sure which direction to go, or maybe it's one of those happens in the farming industry. This is the way Dad did it, it's the way Grandpa did it, it's the way I'm going to do it. You stick with what works, but obviously the ag industry has evolved since then. How do they evolve and stay relevant?
I think you touched on it, right? It's that risk, right? Well, I would try it, I'm afraid to. So we're hoping that with some of these funds we can maybe mitigate some of that risk and show people that this works here. We'll cover the cost of maybe trying to plant a cover crop or maybe make some equipment changes so you can plant into it, So we don't know what it all looks like yet. We're still kind of flushing this and building this idea, but it's something that we're certainly trying to encourage more farmers. And we've seen it. Wisconsin, there's more and more of these watershed groups coming together and forming, getting off the ground. And so there are more and more people paying attention and learning and educating themselves.
And now obviously Farm Bill's coming up and you guys have just as much stake in that as anybody. Tell us about some of the concerns you got now. Obviously we're going to have the houses divided by who's in control. Hopefully that means they're going to work together. We can't guarantee that, but ag normally a bipartisan issue. I mean, what's the message that you guys are hoping to get through the Farm Bill to those Congress people?
Yeah, so we've released some of our priorities, and there's a lot of stakeholder meetings going on, and they're saying we want to get this done by mid next year. There's a lot of work to be done yet, but we have farmers that are anxious and willing and ready to be at the table. We're taking a group of farmers down to Washington D.C. here coming up early part of next year to make sure that our voice is being heard down there. I think there's several issues that we're going to be really pointing on. Federal order pricing reform is something that we've brought to light, and we've got a pretty good position there, I believe. But as well as the DMC program has been working fairly well for the small and middle-sized farmer. They made some updates to that, mid-cycle, and we're going to continue to encourage them to maybe add some different tiers to that. And so I think we're positioned really well, and we're looking forward to the I don't want to call it a fight, but to the discussions and the ongoing meetings, and we're glad to be in that.
How important is it to have those farmers along when you're bringing that message? It's one thing to have a cooperative in front or an ag industry in front of them, but to have the farmers who are boots on the ground or boots in the barn to go and tell that story.
Yeah, it's. I always tell the story about the first time I went to Washington, D.C. and met with Representative Colin Peterson, and as we came walking through the door into his office, he looked at me and he said, "You're a farmer, you sit here." because they want to hear your story, right? He could pick the lobbyist out, and he said, you can sit over there. So, you know, it's every time we go to Washington, D.C., every policymaker that you meet with is the same. They want to hear the stories from the ground, from the farm, with your barn boots.
And you know, we're also talking about the fact that, you know, farmers sometimes like to mind their own business and tend to their own business. But obviously, getting their voice out there, whether it's telling the story, whether it is, we have an Iowa dairy farmer right now who's a great TikTok person who is engaging with the industry and having some interesting discussions too. But how do they, you know, some people might be saying, I don't know where to start. How do I get involved? How can I help? Or maybe I'm not suited for being in front of TikTok, but what can I do to help the industry and tell the story?
Yeah, you know, there's so many different ways. Everybody thinks you have to be a social media giant in order to tell the story, right? But I mean, you can start as simple as taking the kindergarten class from a local school, bringing them out to your farm, and showing them what farming is. There's such a disconnect between even rural populations and the farm and where food is produced. These people are so disconnected. You know, they think they milk the cow or they produce chocolate milk in the back of the grocery store. There's such a disconnect. So, and aiming and targeting these younger populations aside from social media, getting school groups out and chambers of commerce and getting involved in local businesses and being part of the conversation. You know, in Wisconsin, we've got a lot of these, like I touched on, these farmer-led watershed groups that we're involved. It's not just for farmers anymore, right? We're involving local business leaders, municipalities, the sewage districts. You know, we're getting everybody involved when we talk about water quality and where the nutrients are, because we're all sort of in that same boat, and we all need to continue to work together to tell that story.
All right, well, Brody, we thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us today and look forward to hearing more from Edge Dairy.
All right, appreciate your time.
That again was Brody Stapel of Edge Dairy. Let's go ahead and take a look at that ag weather outlook. Well, the thunder was rolling last night, if you didn't get a chance to hear it, at least here in central Iowa, but did hear more reports of rain across a lot of the state. Now, is that going to hold on? Are we going to see any of that sunshine return? What is it going to happen? Well, we'll see what happens in the National Weather Service in the next 24 hours. Well, we saw some thunderstorm activity here overnight in Des Moines and elsewhere across the state. We're still going to see some clouds, fog, and rain here throughout the day, but that'll start to give way a little bit to some sunshine in the southwest. We're going to see those highs today anywhere from the upper 30s to the mid-50s. Now, tonight we'll start to see clouds slowly decreasing, but not by a whole lot, and we're going to see those lows anywhere in the low 20s to the low 30s. And then tomorrow, partly sunny skies with snow possible in the northwest, and we'll see highs anywhere from the upper 30s again to the low 50s. Taking a look at the affiliate weather map tomorrow, look for cloudy skies and snow in Cherokee and 38. Shenandoah, partly sunny, 51. Des Moines, partly sunny and 48. Waterloo, partly sunny, and a flood watch goes into effect tomorrow with a high of 44. Albia, partly sunny and 50. Clinton, partly sunny and 48 degrees. For more detailed forecasts in your area, tune to your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliate. And that's been our Ag Weather Outlook. And with that, we're at the end of today's show. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, and on our YouTube channel. Don't forget that while you're there, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and you'll be notified anytime we get a new video project loaded. You can also check out our free Twice Daily Market podcast through Amazon, Apple, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the IARN studios in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Huffman. For Riley Smith and Mark Magnuson, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.